Hello and welcome to this Men's Health Week webinar held in partnership with Belfast Trust Health Improvement Team, Belfast Men's Health Group and Men's Health Forum Ireland. My name is Claire Flynn and I work in the Health Improvement Team at Belfast Health and Social Care Trust, and I'm also a member of Belfast Men's Health Group. That's a group that was set up to address health inequalities impacting men in the city of Belfast. And those inequalities include things like the fact that men have a lower life expectancy than women, that males have higher rates of death than females for almost all of the leading causes of death and across all age groups. And why is this? Well, in some cases, it could be men's lifestyles that are responsible for them experiencing a higher proportion of chronic diseases, but it could also be late presentation to health services that can lead to health problems becoming untreatable. So Belfast Men's Health Group brings together a wide range of organisations working to address these inequalities. And if you're interested in finding out more about the work of the group, including their fantastic podcast, just visit belfastmenshealthgroup.org and click Contact Us if you're interested in joining the group. Now, we're here for Men's Health Week, which aims to raise awareness of just the type of inequalities that I mentioned, and to help us all understand how we can improve health outcomes for men. Men's Health Forum Ireland coordinate the annual All Ireland campaign for Men's Health Week, which we're marking with this webinar. But there is also a whole series of events taking place across Ireland, both north and south, this week. And Men's Health Forum Ireland published a great report titled Men's Health in Numbers, which tells you everything you need to know about the facts and figures on men's health on the island of Ireland. So to find out more about Men's Health Forum Ireland, including that report, just visit mhfi.org. Now, before we introduce today's guests on the webinar, let's have a look at a short video to find out more about Men's Health Week. As you saw in the video, the theme for this year's Men's Health Week is Shoulder to Shoulder Connecting for Health. And in today's webinar, that's one of the themes that we'll be discussing with our guests, the importance of connection and community for men who are facing health challenges, specifically cancer. So today we are joined by Paul Marshall, who will be speaking about his lived experience of cancer and the importance of community and peer support and how art has become part of his story of recovery. Hi, Paul. And we will also be joined by Cara Ghiglieri to speak about her experience of as a carer of a loved one who experienced a cancer diagnosis. She'll also talk about her role as a committee member with local cancer charity OGNI and also her PhD research. So, Cara, we'll come back to you later, but we'll start off chatting to Paul. And Paul, I wondered if you could start by telling us a bit about the time when you first experienced the early signs and symptoms of your illness and what the journey was like, to receiving a cancer diagnosis.
Sure. Well, actually, it's hard to know where the journey starts, and I think this is probably common to many people who find themselves in a situation is there's no start point at which the cancer starts. It's something that grows over a period of time. That could have been, that could have been 2 years. It could have been a year. I really don't know. It's just the nature of stomach cancer, as it was in my case. So, I had some life changes, sort of a change in relationships, which left me living on my own from about late 2021. And over the next kind of 18 months, I found myself dropping 5 or 10 kilos. Now, in retrospect, that would bring me into a 2-year window before I was diagnosed. But it really didn't become marked until during 2023. My work took me to foreign parts. I actually have a little presentation here together. And in 2023, I had been invited to tour with an Irish dance company. They were heading off to Japan. The Irish Dance Company is based in Chicago. So it involved about a 5-week round trip to Chicago and then on to Japan, and essentially living out of a suitcase, essentially. So as you might imagine, it doesn't take long under the rigors of touring. I mean, I'm sure that not many people have experienced what it's like to tour in kind of an intensive situation like that, where you're in a different city every day. But actually, it doesn't take long to show any kind of weaknesses that happen to have. And for me, that manifested itself as extreme fatigue. My working situation was incredibly difficult from the moment I got up until the moment I went to bed. I was on duty. I was doing a 5-camera shoot of the Irish dance performance, as well as any documentary behind the stage, VIP interviews, all that kind of stuff. And then at night times, whenever everybody else was in their bed or was socializing, I was sitting in my hotel room, backing off data on cards and that kind of stuff. So it became clear really very quickly. And I suppose it depends on the kind of work that you're doing, but this is particularly pronounced because you have to push yourself anyway. And I was, as it turns out, fighting the anemia. So that was later to be discovered, and I was hugely fatigued by that. So I came back in that summer, and had a kind of through the rest of the summer. Things didn't really improve. The fatigue kind of improved a bit, but I was resting. I was able to sleep as much as I could, and really it didn't improve much. And then I developed some kind of lower gut symptoms, which seemed to be kind of persistent, but they just wouldn't lift. And then interspersed with bouts of diarrhea, constipation, kind of general gastrointestinal instability, and it's not something that I mean, we all get that kind of occasionally, but not something that Dad had kind of this persistent and going on. And over this period, I lost approximately 5 kilos. My weight had gone down initially from 80 down to 75 when I went to Japan, and by this stage I was down to around about 70 kilos. By the time it got to September, October of 23, I was back working, but almost permanently constipated. And then I started to get a stuck sensation in the middle of my chest. And this was kind of really concerning. And I mean, it gets to the point that your friends start to notice, your friends start to say, Paul, you're not looking very well, you're not great colour, you keep talking about this thing. Did you ever start to go to the doctor? And I spent a good 6 or 8 weeks going, no, it's fine. No, never worry. Listen, I'm grand. No, it's fine. It just keeps coming and going. It's just a wee thing, But actually, whenever things started to accumulate and happen together, I thought, you know what, I have to go to the doctor. So this would have been October of 2023. The doctor took some bloods, and with the result of the bloods, he found out that I was anemic, which explained the fatigue. It explained the brain fog. It explained all the kind of a lot of the symptoms that I've been experiencing traveling in Japan, and really just exacerbated under that particular workload. So I had 5 weeks of B12 injections, and that's the slide here. The body shot start there. So this was the first real body shot. 5 weeks of these injections, which if you've ever had them, are like getting a punch in the arm. And those came back saying that there was no apparent improvement to my iron levels. The doctor could see there was no cause for me losing blood. I wasn't bleeding from anywhere. And that obviously raised some red flags. And then at that point, then he says, listen, I'm not happy with this. I can't explain it through normal means, and I'm going to red flag it. And within 3 weeks, it was diagnosed. So, excuse me. So that's how I got to diagnosis. That's the kind of, it kind of creeps up slowly. It happened over a period probably of a couple of years, and gradually accelerated. A couple of gremlins in the gastrointestinal system. Just things weren't really happening. The weight was dropping off. My energy wasn't good. My belt was tightening, as you could see. Yeah, So I just ended up going to the doctor, and of course then it gets me to the point where it gets red flagged. And I suppose then we're into the next part of it there.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Paul. So, you've spoken quite a lot there about the physical aspects of the physical changes in your body and all the symptoms that you were dealing with. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the effects on your mental health and how you managed that, and how you sort of found strength to deal with your diagnosis and treatment?
Yeah, sure. So my diagnosis happened on the 21st of December. I had a scope, north and south, shall we say, and he just sat me up afterwards and says, "We've found something in your in your upper stomach, lower esophagus, and we'd be highly suspicious that it's cancer." And I think your world stops at that point. So I think your initial uh, idea is that, what the hell? Where did this come from? I thought I was maybe getting, an IBD or colitis or some other diagnosis here. I had no idea that it was going to be something like this. And I think everything stops for a short period of time. And in the intervening days, it was confirmed by a biopsy the following day. A week later, I had a CT scan, which confirmed that the tumor was the full thickness of the stomach. And it was a T4, as they call it. It had gone from the inside of the stomach right through the lining of the stomach and out the other side, was visible from both sides, but fortunately appeared to be contained to itself, so there was no apparent spread. And I think the surgeon used a phrase that he would be cautiously optimistic that there was no spread. And I think somebody throws you a straw, and you hold on to it, and it makes something 51-49 instead of 50-50. And that's enough between having some hope and having no hope. And I think one of the things that I found very strong, and a very strong motivator in this, is hope, and reasons for hope. And I think we'll talk about that later on. But essentially, from that point, it took 12 days until I had gone through another procedure, thing called a staging laparoscopy, where it's like keyhole surgery, and they do a bunch of tests, and they take some fluid from inside of you, and they run tests on that to see if there's any apparent spread of the cancer beyond the apparent stomach tumor that was visible. And those 12 days were the longest and probably the most traumatic days of my life. And I could tell nobody. I told my friends, my close friends. I told my sister, my brother. I couldn't tell my kids until I knew whether I was going to fall on a side of a very serious divide, which would lead to a curative pathway where I could be cured, or where it would lead to a palliative pathway where I would be made comfortable just until the cancer worked itself out and I reached the end of my days. So it took 12 days. 12 of the longest days for that to happen. And I apologize for this, but it is a trauma. But I think that's important for people to see.
Yeah.
Because I am not the first and I won't be the last. And through that all, I had that hope. I had that 51-49 hope. And in that time in between, I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell my kids. It was Christmas. It was New Year. The slide on the screen shows how I tried to distract myself. I spent 3 days making ramen from scratch, ordering stuff from all around the world. It was fabulous. It tasted incredible, but I only managed 3 mouthfuls. Everybody else enjoyed it. Everybody else had a great New Year's Eve. And I was knowing that I was going in for the next stage, which is the multidisciplinary team, 2 days later, on the 2nd of January. So, apologize for this. So, in terms of mental health, that was a real, in terms of having a low point, in terms of putting a foot in either camp. This was just well, I can relive that. I can go back there straight away, and because of that, I have great survivor guilt, because I survived and many people won't and don't. And therefore, I'm using that feeling and that emotion and that sensation to motivate myself to step forward, to say to people, take care of each other, listen out for the things that we're going to talk about later on, which are the symptoms and things to watch out for. Because it is literally the difference between somebody at your table next Christmas and not. And it could be so very different, and I was very lucky. So that was the real mental health challenge for me initially, and I don't think there's any way around that. I think you just have to prepare yourself for that. You have your family around you. I think life becomes very simple very quickly. I think you learn to reprioritize many things. I think you realize that we are surrounded by fluff and nonsense and things that mean nothing, and that we engage ourselves in busyness just for the sake of busyness, or just for looking good, or our comparison to other people around us. And I think that's really, in retrospect, because I did it, I mean, I'm no different than anybody else, but in retrospect, that's nonsense. So there's so much more things that are important, and that revolves around the people and the people in your life, the way you live your life, and where you place your values. So once I became over, once I received the news that I had got over that hurdle, and that the Macmillan nurse, thank you, Maureen, called me. I was in St George's Market, and from that moment, I have been filled with this immense gratitude, and a sense of duty, and a desire to pay it forward. And I think that has helped inform everything else. I think what has also helped is that I worked 2 or 3 years ago with ladies who had secondary breast cancer. This is stage 4 cancer, for whom there's no like hope for remission, but really, I mean, it is going to be the end of them. And the experience of working with them, and the trauma that they were undergoing, and that they endured, meant I really felt how lucky I had been, by my doctor's good sense to flag it quickly, by my own good sense to listen to my friends who were nagging me, and for the skill of everybody else who came afterwards, who did such an incredible job, and who lifted me up and carried me home. Following that, the news that my pathway was going to be a curative one, you go through a process called a multidisciplinary team, where you're involved. You go into one waiting area, but there are little rooms of the area, and behind one is the surgeon, one is the oncologist, one is the anaesthetist. You have the physio, you have the preparatory nurses, you have the Macmillan, you have the dietitians, you have all these people, and within a 3 or 4 hour stretch, you get to do all of these appointments with all of these people. And I have to say, it's just one of the most incredible things. You come out with so much information. And for me, and again, we're talking about the mental health aspects here. I made my mind up at that point that I wanted to know as much as I could know, because there's nothing I have learned from the previous experience of not knowing, that fear lies in the unknown. For me, fear lies in the unknown, and I would rather know the gory truth than not know. And so I said to the surgeon, I says, tell me as much as you can, tell as much as you're able, without going into technical stuff. But I mean, I need to know what's coming out. I need to know the details. And I made it my business to go and learn. And I watched all the surgeries. I'm not recommending this for everybody, but I'm recommending that there is power in knowledge. And I think you can empower yourself, and you can take agency for your own ability to prepare yourself through this, by arming yourself with knowledge about what is going to happen, and therefore it is not scary to you. And this brings me on to the kind of next real kind of mental health stage that I wanted to talk about, which is kind of I evolved into some kind of an accidental stoic, where for me it was about, what are the things that I can change, what are the things that I can focus on, what are the things that I can't, who are the professionals that I have to deal with, And so I handed over what I could not control to other people, and I focused on the things that I could control. And that led me to a thing called prehab. Prehab is prescriptive. It comes from the physiotherapists, the anaesthetists love it, everybody else loves it, because even if you have a couple of weeks from the point of diagnosis until surgery, even you can keep up prehab even through chemo. But the prescription is to walk 10,000 steps a day, not as fast as you can, but at a pace. Take on board as many calories as you can, sleep as much as you can. I wore out a pair of shoes and I wore out my dog. But it's the only thing you could do. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I walked. I bought myself an Apple Watch so I could track my walk. So this is the entire, I live in a development, this is the entire development I walk in. It's 8.1 kilometers, 5 miles around. And I walked every day. I didn't walk this every day, but I walked variations of this every day. So I took responsibility for myself. But ultimately, the path that I was going on was one that took me from being in this kind of a place, a beautiful Buddhist temple at the top of a hill in Aichi in Japan, to into treatment and to Ward 2A of the Cancer Centre in Belfast. And I was struck today by these two images, how they sit side by side and how they represent so different a worldview, a perspective, and how life, my life, your life, anyone's life can change in such a short period of time. So I made it my business to get myself as prepared as I could. And then slowly then I'm into chemotherapy, which is its own trials. I don't need to describe what chemotherapy does. Really, it just ravages the body. But again, another two images that had a resonance for me. Places that you sit and you spend lots of time in lots of places. Cancer involved lots of sitting around, being very grateful for the act of being able to wait, for the treatment that you're about to get. And so there's lots about that. Without sparing you too many gory details, I lost all my fingernails. I lost my toenails. Some of my toenails are not fully back yet. I lost all my taste for 4.5 out of the 9 months that I was in treatment. Couldn't taste a thing apart from sweetness. It was absolutely devastating, the weight that I lost. I still had no appetite. This is my Easter Sunday dinner, 2024. So this is where your stoicism comes in. I ate roast potato, 1 carrot, and I drank the Fortisip that is not in that image. And then I went and slept for 2 hours. So this is what it's like. But I was stoic. I was prepared. I was mentally prepared. People kept saying to me, I can't believe how strong you are, how brave you are. And that was because I made a decision 2 months before that I have seen what this does. I have seen how powerful the mind is. I have seen how powerful a clinical tool your own mind can be, and how you can set yourself up for this kind of thing to be, not that you can make things better, but I think if your state of mind can make things worse, or I think you can choose a different pathway through this, that you don't take control, that you don't take agency for yourself, and that you don't act in your own best interests. It's very easy to become, why did this happen to me? To feel, and I have felt it. We all have moments. This is the toughest fight I've ever had. Why was it me? It was my turn. I am 1 and 2, but I am not a soldier. I'm not a warrior. I'm just 1 and 2. If you got a fight to fight, this is the fight that you have to have. So the chemo, everything, I was good with it. I was fine. Strength, straight through treatment. And out the other side, and I was still really strong. And I think that's one kind of mental strength. And I'm so grateful that I had it. I had that fortitude to kind of steel myself up through knowledge and awareness and trust of the skills of the people around me. to then take agency control over the things that I could control, and move myself forward in the best possible condition. And I came out the other side. I was off morphine in 2 days. I was off all painkillers in 3 days. I was out of the hospital in 6 days. And I was on my couch 2 days before my 60th birthday with my little doggy. And there could have been no better 60th birthday present. I didn't cry until that point. I cried 3 days solid, and I really haven't stopped. I think part of that is relief. I think part of that is joy. I think part of that is a deep sadness for those who walk the other path, and I feel them. I can feel their pain. And I do not revel in this joy that I feel. But I think in my joy, I think there's responsibility to share it with other people and say, take responsibility for yourself and each other, and listen out for what's going on. So after the surgery is a whole different kettle of fish. And I have to say there's a whole different, there's the kind of, I have to say, there's like a jubilation that comes. There's a whole euphoria that comes of surviving something like this. It's like you've gone past the cliffhanger. You're on to season 2. Is a bit what it feels like, and it's the start of a whole brand new season, and it's all brand new, and you've got all the knowledge and awareness. You've survived this incredible thing. You have been shaped in ways as yet unknown by this incredible experience that you've had. And it moves you forward. But moving forward and adjusting to the limitations that have been, that are caused by the surgery and the chemotherapy and the treatment and the overall toll upon my body, the weight loss. I lost 30% of my body weight. I'm a centimetre shorter than I was when I started this. Those things take their toll, and I am weakened. I do get fatigued. And I think that's a different kind of mental resolve. And I'm in that place now. And it gets easier, or it gets less difficult. I think you learn to strategize. I think you learn to work your way around problems over, under, around, or through has been a bit of a mantra for mine since I became a single parent 30 odd years ago. It has stuck with me for a long time. There's always a way to get to the other side of something. And there are times now when I feel that, when I work through the nausea, I work through the diarrhea, I work through the 6 meals a day, I work through the total change to every single aspect of my life. And that's a different mental health challenge, and that's where I am now. And that's where I find the benefit of talking to other people and doing what I'm doing now, which is, perhaps being somewhat of an agent for other people in saying, okay, the person who hears this now doesn't know that they need to hear this, but you need to hear this. This webinar could change your life or the life of somebody around you. And there's no easy way to put that. If you're saying, I'm fine, I'm grand, it's nothing. Those are bad decisions, and each one moves you 10 minutes closer to finding out that it's too late to do anything about it. So do something sooner rather than later. Anyway, so that's been it. It's been a whole mental health journey, I have to say. And it's taught me a lot about myself. It's taught me a lot about resilience. Taught me a lot about people, and the strength that a person can have. So yeah, wow.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Paul. It's the news that nobody wants to hear, that they've got a diagnosis of cancer, but unfortunately, as you said, it's something that lots of people are experiencing every single day. So, thank you for all your work to try and help those other people affected. And it was really interesting to hear about how you found strength through focusing on what you could control and through gratitude. And I know that one of the other things that you had told me gave you strength was support from other people, and that sense of community that you found as part of your recovery.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I've been reflecting upon this experience quite a bit. And it came to me that there were a number of things which were really important in my journey, but also I think which are important things to take forward for other people. And that thing is exactly that, other people. So I mean, the things which come out for me with the importance of your mental preparation, your mental state of mind, but also the importance of the people who are around you. And there's a phrase, I think it's an old African phrase, that says it takes a village to raise a child. And I know I'm kind of mashing the metaphor there, but essentially it's the same concept. I mean, I know there definitely are people, and it's tragic that there are people who go through cancer alone. But really, when a cancer diagnosis is made, it's made to the patient, but the impact is to the family and immediately, and then to the circle of people who surround that person. And I think it's really, whilst I as a patient sit in the middle and I have all the information and knowledge and I share what I can, and I'm trying to keep 20 or 30 people up to date, and etc., etc., etc. I have a bunch of people around me who really want to help, who really want to do the best thing, who don't know what to do, who don't know, is that too much, is that not enough, should I call around, should I make him something to eat, should I bake him something, should I just come, and I mean, and to be honest with you, the most valuable thing that anybody can spend is time with you, because cancer does involve spending a lot of time on your own. And I'm very fortunate that through my work I have traveled, and I've worked with many people. I've worked with dance companies and bands, and I just all across the world. It's been incredible, and festivals. And when this became apparent, my friends just rallied around, and it was the most incredible experience. And I think I learned a lot from that experience in itself. I think over the years, because I had been in a serious relationship and focusing on relationship and family, everything else, the end of that makes you realize just how alone we all can be. Yes, okay, we are connected to each other through our devices and through our social media and this stuff, but actually the act of human connection is something that we don't have as much as we used to have. And we get used to living our lives, we get into our routine, and it's all devices. But it's amazing that whenever this came up, through the joys of social media, all of a sudden I had hundreds, if not thousands, of people just come out of nowhere, and just the support was incredible. My inbox, my messages, my everything blew up. I had friends in America who started a fundraiser, and I have to say I'm so grateful for that, and it saw me through quite a few months of my recovery. When it would have been universal credit otherwise. So I'm so grateful, because obviously I'm not able to work. I'm still not able really to work. So again, the sense of gratitude, it just builds and builds and builds and builds. But also there's hope and there's spirit. And I think I had a sensation of being insulated, of being elevated, literally lifted and carried and set gently home. And I think I can't thank and praise the people around me, whether they live 1,000 or 3,000 miles away, whether they're in my house, whether they come in to administer some element of my treatment, whether they were there with me through long nights and early mornings and kind of difficult days. I'm so grateful for every one of them, and I cannot pay them back, because many of the people are not accessible. So I'm paying it forward. What I'm going to start here, just in the background, is a little video. It's just a selection of images and texts that I received over the period. And again, so these are just little little things that come in whenever we talk about the next bit that we're talking about, which is how I have started to express myself. I think you'll see some of these things coming in now, some of these themes, and how the importance of the people around you and that communication. I think communication is critical. So this is just what it's about. It's about people. It's about talking. It's about reaching out. It's about not being afraid to reach out, not being afraid to ask for help. Being able to say, yes, actually, I would appreciate your help. I have incredible neighbours who cut my grass, who still put my bins out, who throw me in a lasagna or a bowl of chicken soup when they made too much. You know, the incredible, the incredible people that we're around is what this is about. So I know Cara's going to come on to she has a slightly different perspective, but from a patient perspective, I can't value these people enough. My heart breaks for those people who go through this alone. And it's really I can't overstate the value of the village with whom you surround yourself as you go through this process, and I wish that for everybody. So yeah, I wanted to celebrate them, which is what I'm doing here.
Wow, that really brings it to life. Thank you for sharing those pictures and messages, Paul. And I know that you have more recently, you've been starting to use your talents as a visual artist to put on a photography exhibition about your story and about your journey to recovery. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. All the way through in my day-to-day work, I'm a photographer and videographer. I work in 3D and 360. I design virtual galleries. Essentially, I work across a whole range of fields, but essentially, I term myself a storyteller. I think the medium can change. I think the mechanism and the tools and the devices can change, but I think ultimately it's about developing the skills to interrogate a subject and tell a story and work through some sort of a critical process and come out the other end with something which I feel represents something of an experience or some sort of action or some sort of it's really about a means of expression, really. So I'm driven obviously by the image, and part of my day-to-day work is I teach 1 day a week in the School of Art in the University of Ulster, and I teach video to photographers on the BA, which is bizarre, teaching video to photographers, but it's a really important tool in the toolbox and a storytelling tool. But my colleague there is a renowned portrait photographer called Jim McGinn, and I'd asked Jim would he be willing to take some photographs of me just in the last days of my chemo. So I had chemo both before and after surgery. So this is what's called adjuvant chemo. It happens after surgery, and that's why I still have the PICC line in and the bandage on my arm. So Jim said yes, he would take the photographs, but he wouldn't take any credit for the photographs. He says all I'm doing is I'm being your finger and your eye. He says, but you're telling me what to take. You're moving around. I'm just pressing the button. So we've arrived at this title of Self-Portraits of Paul Marshall, but taken by Jim McGinn, which keeps him happy and keeps him happy, keeps me happy. He didn't want his name anywhere near it. And the whole thing about it was the whole notion of body shots is that, as you saw when I talked about the B12 injection, it's the notion of in combat, one person will throw shots or kicks to the body of the other person, and the object of that is to weaken them, and therefore they can then come in with a killer blow and win the fight. And it occurred to me during the process of making this that this is all about assaults upon the body and the trauma of those various things in and around the stomach. And again, other cancers may be different, but for me it resonated in this way, in that I was in a fight is the wrong word, but I was in a battle. I mean, it was a life or death battle, there's no question about it. Things could have turned out very differently, but I was in a life or death battle, and so I asked Jim to take the photographs. And so we took those on the last day before the end of my chemo. And then I spent 2 or 3 months working with a bunch of other images, which you've started to see throughout here. And I created a virtual exhibition showing those images, but set in a kind of a hospital ward gallery context. So I'm going to play that here. So that was the virtual version. That was where the idea came, and it, my intention was that it wouldn't go beyond that. But of course, then I have a friend who's an incredible arts activist and curator, and a lady called Noelle McAlinton. If you're involved in the Northern Ireland art scene at all, you will definitely have bumped into her. And so she set about trying to get me an actual exhibition in an actual show, in an actual gallery. And I was fortunate enough to have been selected by Queen Street Studios, which is an Arts Council gallery. It's one of Northern Ireland's premier galleries, to have a show in there of actual photographs. And I have essentially done what was in the virtual. I created the blue curtains, which give the hospital ward effect. So this is these are actual photographs taken from the exhibition. And if you go to the web URL that's on the screen, you can visit a virtual tour around it in photography. So you can go around it and have a look in details. So this is like a 1 minute screen show. This table was very revealing. This was little shots, little photographs, and little phrases, which so I printed out 1,000 of these communications that I'd had with people on the little strips of paper. The colour here is reflective of the Ward 2 North morning in May. The orange sunlight comes in. I had tried to get some kind of a chemo ward kind of feel. The Shisendo book is a reference to Jerry Daw. I had worked with the poet Jerry in the 2 or 3 years before that to create a retrospective for him, and Jerry died during the period that I was sick. I never got to say goodbye, so a little tip of the hat to Jerry in the exhibition. And this was kind of Belfast City Trust very generously lent me the hospital equipment. It was all defunct on its way out. But you can see here a selection of the messages that were printed. They were put inside test tubes. Again, this notion of each one being a needle, each one being a body shot, each one being something, whether they're taking blood or whether they're giving you something that's going to help you, each one is part of that transactional nature of fluids and needles and words and all these things that are important components of our experience. So this is what was in the show in the gallery in Queen Street Studios, and it's just come down there literally just a week or 10 days ago. I'm looking for other opportunities to show it, because around this we had some outreach events where we had some question and answer sessions, and we opened up some conversations, and it's amazing actually, me being in that space with this, the number of people who have confided in me and talked to me about their own experience. Some people who are undergoing cancer, people who haven't told anybody, people who have kept it to themselves, and I feel so sad for those people who are saying, well, I'm going through this, but I don't want to tell anybody. I feel ashamed. I don't understand those feelings. I understand that they are there, but it's not how I feel. So I understand that everybody's journey is different through through their cancer and through mine. So, as I said, my exhibition and my art was a way to express myself, to create an experience for other people as they go around the exhibition. They have an experience of what it's like, note by note, photograph by photograph, to build up a picture of what it's like to be a cancer patient, or to be a family or a patient or person around a cancer patient. And the idea was that it would be, instead of conceptual art, it would be kind of inceptual art, that it would plant a seed, that somewhere along the line it would blossom into something. Oh, that guy talked about that persistent stomach thing, that early satiety, that kind of diarrhea, the stuck food feeling, lack of appetite. That's all I'm after, and that's all the exhibition is trying to do. So this is why I'm doing this. This is why the exhibition is about. It's an opportunity to do exactly what we're doing here, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to be in this forum with you all, and to talk about my art and my experience. And I do hope sincerely that it saves a family going through what would otherwise be kind of a very bad situation at some point down the future. So that art at its best is doing something, I think, and I hope that for this.
Yeah, it's certainly, hearing your story is very powerful in one way, but the exhibition, as you say, it reaches you in a different way, and it might reach a different audience of people. And the fact that there's the legacy, although the physical exhibition is finished, there's the legacy of people being able to go on ogbodyshots.com and and experience it that way is fantastic.
Yes, I hope that's the case. And I also have it's probably maybe not so relevant here, but I also have a Facebook group for people who don't have a stomach. The idea is that we share.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for sharing that with us. And we're going to come back and chat with you before the end of the webinar. But for now, I'm going to introduce our second speaker, Cara Ghiglieri. So Cara is going to speak along some of the same themes as Paul has, but she is coming from the point of view of a carer. So Cara, would you like to tell us a little bit about your personal experience in relation to cancer, and about how this has actually led you to a career in research related to cancer?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Claire. I will, but just before I do that, can I just say, Paul, I've worked in this space now for over a decade, and I have these conversations and hear these stories every week. And I just thought that was incredibly powerful, what you had to say there. And I think that just really speaks to both the power of your voice and your story, but also the power of that visual storytelling, which you obviously just do so well. So I just hope you know that you're also a complete force to be reckoned with, but also a very hard act to follow. So please do bear with me with this. I have no visuals, so it's just me. But yes, so I suppose in relation to how I kind of my connection to esophageal and stomach cancer then. So my mum was diagnosed with esophageal cancer back in 2015. And I quite quickly became her carer at the time. A bit like Paul, things were probably around for a little while with her, but we didn't know that they were. So there was none of us around her were really kind of suggesting she go to the GP or go and get help or anything like that. We just really had no clue. So when she was diagnosed, it was very much a complete shock to us. We had absolutely no idea what was happening really. And it just turned all our lives upside down. I suppose from that and the impact that had on me, my mum she died 11 months after she was diagnosed. It was quite a rapid trajectory. And for me, it was it's like Paul said, it's not just a physical illness. It really does disrupt and interrupt every aspect of your life. And that was true for my life as well, and my family's life. And that for me was something that I didn't really feel was recognized. And so after she died, I got involved in doing some PPI work, so patient and public involvement, and using my experiences to be a bit of a voice, I suppose, for the carers, but also just because I felt that there wasn't enough of an understanding of what happens when you're diagnosed with esophageal or stomach cancer. And through that, then I decided to return to university. I ended up doing a PhD that looked specifically at the kind of psychosocial impact and the aspects of esophagogastric cancer. And I completed that in 2023. And I suppose the majority of my work now, I work as an academic psychologist, so I'm in research. And the majority of my work is in how do people cope, how do people adjust, and what can we do to actually support people when they're going through this. And that's both the patient and the carer. And one of the things that I'm really, really interested in is the role of kind of support networks and the people around the person that's living with cancer. So it was really interesting to hear Paul's side of that as well, and the role that that played. But I suppose that feeds into the third hat, I suppose, that I wear, which is as a committee member for OGNI Cancer and I, who are a national charity over here that support anyone that's affected by esophageal and stomach cancer. But that's very briefly an introduction to me and my connection to it all. But I'm sure we'll cover it in a bit more detail today.
Yeah, thanks, Cara. And yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about your mum, but it's obviously something that has given you such a passion to take forward your work and to help other people, which is incredible. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about the charity OGNI. It's not one that I had heard of before I met you and Paul. So can you tell us the kind of support that the charity offer and what their aims are?
Yeah, of course. So they are a charity, I suppose, that we exist to support anyone that's been affected by esophageal and stomach cancer. So that's the patient, that's the carer, but also we work closely with the healthcare professionals as well. So we can try and understand what support people need, but also how we can actually advocate as a charity to improve the support that's offered. But our overarching and our main aim is always just to provide support. And we do that in quite a few different ways. So one of the things that we offer is peer support. And that is through things like we have a wellbeing meeting that we host. It's twice a year. And it's quite a big event now. It's really, really grown over the years, which is on one hand amazing to see, but also it's always really hard to see so many new people coming through the charity. But what people tell us is that having that space to go and to connect with people who have lived it and who have been there and who can share strategies and share the things that help them is just something that's really important to their cancer journey, and for other carers as well, to actually meet other people and talk to people that are in their shoes as well, and maybe in a slightly further on part of their journey too. Another thing that we offer is a thing called a buddy scheme. And this is something that would have made such a difference to my mum had it existed back then. Because I can remember feeling that we were the only people going through this in the country, because esophageal and stomach cancer are just not your household names like a lot of other cancers. I had never heard of it. So what the buddy scheme does is essentially anyone that goes through their cancer treatment will be referred to us by the CNSs, and we'll then work really closely with them to find out what support they want and what support or what help they might need. And if a buddy scheme is something that they want, they'll then be paired up with someone who is maybe in a similar situation to them or a similar family situation, but is a bit further on in their journey and can talk them through their experiences and share anything that has kind of helped them. So some of the other things we do are things like wellness packs. So we know that some of the kind of physical challenges that people will experience when they're going through treatment, sometimes it's nice just to get a little pack of things that can help you with some of those challenges. So we offer those. And then we also have information as well, because that's one of the core things that, like Paul was saying, knowledge is power. And it's one of the big things in esophageal cancer is there's not enough information out there. So we do try and really share information with people and get people talking about it a bit more and what to expect and what that journey might look like. And obviously it's so different for everyone, but if people have a bit more of an understanding, that can give them that sense of power and control. And as part of that, I suppose our other objective really is to raise awareness of the signs and the symptoms of esophagogastric cancer and to get people talking about it a little bit more, because again, early detection with this cancer is absolutely crucial. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where the vast majority of people are diagnosed at an advanced stage. And there's so many reasons, so many factors that influence that. But one of the big ones is that people just aren't aware, like we weren't aware of the symptoms. So we were able to mask them or play them down. And that's something that we see a lot. So we really try and get that out there and kind of bring it into public domain a bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Cara. And today, I guess, is a good opportunity for us to raise awareness. Would you be able to share with us some of the signs and symptoms that people should be looking out for if they're not that familiar with esophageal and gastric and stomach cancer, if it's something new to them?
Yeah, of course. So some of the things we would say, and obviously we always preface this with it might be nothing, but it's always best to go and get checked out, and you know your body more than anyone. So just be aware of changes and anything that just doesn't feel right. Some of the main ones that we would say would be persistent heartburn. Obviously, there's loads of reasons why you might have heartburn, but we're really pushing that idea of persistent heartburn. Is it something that you've had? We would usually say around 6 weeks or more, you need to be going in and having a conversation with your GP and explaining that this is something that you have been living with for a while. It's so easy to mask heartburn with antacids, but really, if it's that persistent heartburn, then it is something that we would say go and get checked out. It might be nothing, but it's worth checking out. Some of the other ones would be things like difficulty swallowing. So if you feel that food is sticking a little bit, that would definitely be something that you need to get checked out as well. Again, might be nothing. Things like feeling full really quickly or noticing bloating as well would be another one. And what Paul was saying about the unexplained weight loss, it's really not normal, and something that I would see a lot would be people saying that actually for the first time they were finally losing weight, the diet they were almost finally working, and actually they were delighted to be seeing themselves losing weight, and it wasn't until it got really significant that they realized, okay, I need to go and get this checked. So it's just definitely something to keep an eye on, is what we would say. And again, you know your body best. Any changes, anything that doesn't feel right, go to the GP, and do be persistent about it as well and be vocal, because you do need to be.
Yeah, thanks, Cara. And that's one of the big messages that everybody always tries to get out in Men's Health Week, is to make sure that men are looking out for those signs, not sweeping it under the carpet, not ignoring it. And even though it can be difficult to speak to your GP, as you say, being persistent and making the decision that you're going to get checked out. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that message. Before we finish today, I want to bring Paul back in as well. And I wanted just to give both of you the chance to really share any final thoughts or messages that you wanted to, that you maybe things that you haven't had a chance to say so far on the theme of just, men's health, cancer awareness and community, and that idea, that theme of Men's Health Week of being shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, if I may speak to the gentleman, in the audience. Guys, we're really represented very poorly in the statistics. I think it's something like 60-40 men to women in terms of people who are affected by this. And I think we're very good at being macho and saying it's nothing, it's not killing me right now. It's fine. I'll get over it. Never worry. It'll be grand. And the more every time you say that, it's taking another 3 minutes before somebody, or 10 minutes, or 3 weeks before somebody asks you again, what about that thing? It's delaying the point at which you go to the doctor. And I think our thing about being men is saying, listen, no, it's fine. We're grand. It's nothing. I'm going to power my way through that. And actually, that could kill you. And that's the thing. That's the thing that I'm trying to say is just, if you don't advocate for yourself, by the time other people notice it and get to come and say, did you ever think of it? It could be too late. So as Cara says, listen to your body, listen to what your body's telling you, if it's out of the usual and it's going on for a period of time. And it is I'm particularly pointing this at men, because this is you're the ones with the big numbers. And you're the ones who also then should be easiest to hit. So just look after each other, look at your mates, just take responsibility for each other and say, I'm just going to say something next time, and it's in your hands, so that's what I would say to you. Just don't give in to that. It's fine. It's nothing wrong, to be grand. Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Decision.
Thanks, Paul.
I think I would just add to that is true too beyond the diagnosis. And I think something that I can only speak to through my research and through my experience with the charity, but there is a pattern of, and Paul, you talked about it in the sense that you're stoic and that you just have to get through, you have to get on with it. And it's amazing to hear that you had a village and a community that supported you with that. But sometimes what we see is that people, men and old people, will use that as a way to not ask for help and not reach out and not want to show vulnerability, and just that kind of mindset of, I just need to get through, I need to get on with it. And from a carer perspective, what I would say is a lot of the people that I speak to say one of the biggest challenges for them is getting through to the emotional side and actually getting someone to open up to them and say, I'm really struggling with this, I need help with this, can be really difficult. So I would just say, don't feel that you need to carry everything alone, especially with this illness. You do need support. So I would just say it's absolutely not a weakness to ask for help.
No. I see it as a strength now. I mean, it's a stronger man who can ask for help.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But this is about the whole sense of priorities, that these things get redrawn, in an experience like this. So it's good to help others, and it's good to ask for help, to both give and receive. It's all good.
Well, thank you both so much. The power of your personal stories has really given such a benefit to today's insights around cancer. It is something that none of us wants to think about, but the reality is this Men's Health Week, it's something that we all need to be aware of. And I'm certainly going out of it a lot more clued up about those signs and symptoms to look for, and full of inspiration from the two of you. So thank you again. Don't forget to look at Paul's website at ogbodyshots.com, and you could also search for OGNI, the charity that Cara has spoken about, to find out about their support. So I would also like to give a big thank you to Collie Fowler from Men's Health Forum Ireland, who have supported us in putting this webinar together, and a lot of technical support behind the scenes, and of course for their leadership around promoting Men's Health Week across the island of Ireland. So I hope you've enjoyed the webinar today, and thank you so much everyone for joining us.